Welcome in to Eye on Northeast Kansas, the podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Bruner. This is where we recap some of the top interviews we've had over the past week on Eye on Northeast Kansas. It's our community-oriented talk show that airs live from our WIBW TV studios Monday through Friday, 4 o'clock Central Time. You can catch it always streaming live at that time on WIBW.com or our WIBW News mobile app. And of course, if you're not home to watch, you can listen right here as we recap the week. And what a week it was. We had some fantastic community events that are happening around the area. We talked about those. Also this week, some new faces among our state leadership. Some of them are familiar faces as well. One of those is Tony Mattivi, the new director of the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. We've actually known Director Mattivi for many years through his work as a prosecutor on the national and even global level. He has been a key figure in some major cases in the war on terrorism. He actually sought the Republican nomination for Kansas Attorney General this past election cycle. The new Attorney General, Chris Kobach, defeated him, but then the KBI is under the Attorney General's office, and Attorney General Kobach asked Tony Mattivi if he would serve as the new KBI director. So that's where he got where he is now. He has been very familiar with the agency through his work over the years. So he talked a little bit about that. And one key focus and directive that he's been given is to do something about the fentanyl crisis. So you've been there 6 weeks. What's then the getting to know you process been like?
Well, you know, as a prosecutor for almost 30 years, I worked alongside the KBI on almost all of the cases that I prosecuted. I've been a consumer of literally every type of product generated by the KBI, and they're a wonderful, professional, competent agency that I've known well. So now it's just a matter of getting to know everybody a little better, learning the ins and outs and the intricacies of what happens at the organization. And I have to tell you, I'm having a wonderful time. It's a great organization. We get a lot of support from the Attorney General. So I'm really, really happy about this opportunity.
And what have you learned so far? And what have you been able to say this is where your priorities and your focus will lie?
Sure. So as I sit in the chair and I look out at the horizon in the context of the KBI director, I see a number of things that are issues that we have to deal with on a daily basis. I know that our IT department is the backbone of the entire organization, and I'm concerned that we have the infrastructure in place to keep up with the increasing demands of technology. Our lab is nationally accredited and nationally respected, but it's filled with not just great people, but a lot of really expensive equipment that we have to replace on a regular basis. I want to make sure that we're replacing that equipment frequently enough. I'm worried very much about the explosion that we're seeing in internet crimes, particularly internet crimes against children, because those are very difficult to investigate. Even though we have a wonderful task force right here in Topeka that does an outstanding job with that, we're seeing lots and lots more of that activity. And I'm very concerned that we're on the leading edge of a tidal wave of fentanyl cases that we're going to see here in Kansas. And I have a directive from the Attorney General to do everything that we can to intercept and interrupt all or as much of the fentanyl that's being trafficked into and through this state as we possibly can.
How do we make that happen? We've heard some talk legislatively of what maybe could or could not be done to address the fentanyl crisis. Is there anything in statute that you think could help your efforts, or what's the magic pill, so to speak, for being able to stop fentanyl and the dangers?
Yeah, I wish there were a magic pill, but there's not. Legislatively, we're working with the Attorney General's office on increasing the penalties for those who distribute fentanyl. It really is a poison that's coming into our communities and killing a very broad spectrum of folks in our communities in Kansas. We need to educate people to the fact that fentanyl is being seen in all different kinds of drugs that are being used. And the DEA has a campaign called One Pill Can Kill, and that's really true. And I think people don't recognize, especially the young people, don't recognize how dangerous it is. And we're in front of the legislature right now asking for an enhancement to our budget for additional resources that will help us investigate and interrupt the agency or the organizations that are bringing fentanyl into our state.
And it always comes down to those budget requests. How much more are you asking for, and how do you make that sell to lawmakers that we actually we can't take resources from something else, because we still hear about methamphetamine issues in Kansas. We still hear about, you mentioned internet crime, and now we have this fentanyl thing that we need to address.
Yeah, so the legislature last year did a great thing when they paid off the bonds on the KBI's Forensic Science Center. They paid them off early. and that resulted in a savings of $4.3 million a year in interest. Our proposal to the legislature is, hey, let's reinvest that in law enforcement. That's money that the state has saved as a result of that early payment. We have approached them with a proposal to reinvest that money in law enforcement and allow us specifically to use it to target fentanyl organizations and internet crimes against children.
Why is the issue, especially when you talk about fentanyl, important to everyone in Kansas? Because I'm sure there are some folks at home saying that's great, but I'm a law-abiding citizen, I don't do drugs, therefore this is just something that doesn't concern me.
Yeah, the numbers that we're seeing with regard to fentanyl overdoses and fentanyl deaths are absolutely exploding, and they're not narrowed to any particular community or any particular segment of society. We're working on a public awareness campaign right now along with DEA that's called Faces of Fentanyl, to make people aware of all of the folks in their communities that are dying from exposure to fentanyl. Another thing that we really have to do is sort of change the mindset, not just of the public, but of law enforcement as well. Fentanyl overdoses, we can't treat them like accidents anymore. We have to treat them like homicides, because that's what they are. Somebody intentionally introduced a poison to this person who died as a result. And so fentanyl overdoses really are homicides, and we have to treat them like that.
Can you start prosecuting them that way? Can you start prosecuting a supplier for homicide for a fentanyl overdose?
Not only can we, there are prosecutors all across the state that have already done great work prosecuting people for deaths resulting from fentanyl overdoses.
Would you like to see more of that? And if so, how do you, as you mentioned, educate the public so that juries accept that argument as well?
Yeah, so we need to educate the public, we need to educate the prosecutors. We're meeting with the Attorney General's office on Friday of this week, actually, to talk about how we go about doing that. We want to help give the prosecutors the tools that they need to appropriately prosecute these cases and punish these people.
Related to the fentanyl issue, a Senate committee this week took language out of a bill that had passed the House, which would have decriminalized fentanyl test strips. Some advocates believe that doing that would be a step in helping to perhaps lower the risk of fentanyl overdoses. So that bill now is in limbo, not known what will happen with that proposal. Related to the fentanyl issue, a Senate committee this week stripped language out of a bill that unanimously passed the House decriminalizing fentanyl test strips. Advocates believe that would have been a step in lowering the risk of fentanyl overdoses. So that proposal now is in limbo. Also keeping an eye on legislative activity is our new state treasurer, Stephen Johnson. He took office in January, and he visited the studio to let us know how he's adjusting to his new role. It also is a very timely visit with all the discussion surrounding interest rates and some of the instability in the banking industry. We asked him how some of that could perhaps trickle down to Kansas.
So as we got to work, it was first just getting our arms around everything in the cash flows, and I'm lucky to have a great team of people in the Treasurer's office to help with all of the details that are there. But we are fortunate to have excess revenue, about $1.5 billion of revenue over what had been projected. That combined with good interest rates on short-term money has provided a lot of opportunities. So we really wanted to make sure that anywhere that we had dollars, that they were at work, that they were not idle in the checking account, not earning an interest credit that we could use. So that's one of the things that we actually just got completed this last week in getting an automatic sweep to make sure that every dollar is earning interest.
You talk about interest rates, and when we think about banking these days, it is a little tumultuous, to say the least, on the national level. The Fed this week will be taking a look at interest rates, what to do, hike them, not hike them. How does that impact the state, and how do those sorts of issues kind of trickle down to Kansas?
So great questions, and of course it's as easy to forecast as Jeremy was just doing with the weather, right?
No offense to him.
But as we work through it, the direct impact as the Fed sets their overnight rate, that really affects what we're able to earn on our cash, which is a lot invested at the overnight rate. So right now we're at around 4.5%. If they raise rates, that will elevate what we're able to earn on the state's cash. Currently, that's going to add up to almost $300 million for this calendar year, which is real money that hasn't been there before. So that overnight rate helps us in that regard. We've heard a lot on the federal level that's trickled down as that change in rates really created some issues for banks and the liquidity crisis that they have. We don't happen to have that issue at the state. I think we are fortunate that we don't have a lot of that with most Kansas banks as well. In the state, everything has to be collateralized so that there are dollar for dollar, or in the case of non-treasury or more than 5-year securities, it actually has to be $1.05 in collateral to make sure that our state deposits are safe. So that is what is critical, to make sure that we have the safety, that we have the liquidity. And right now we're lucky that the yield comes from those high Fed rates.
Is there anything that is outside of the state borders, though? And I'm thinking of, how is Capers invested, those sorts of things, because it's really easy to say, well, it's a bank in New York that failed. It's a Silicon Valley bank that failed. Do I really need to be concerned about it here?
So good questions. There are different pools of money, and what we manage directly in the Treasurer's office is those cash assets, which is about $8 billion. In addition, there's about $24 billion in the Capers portfolio, and that is invested broadly, very differently. There we're looking out 50 years, where 50 days is a long time in the state checking account. And our exposure is very different. So we do have some of those types of assets that are there, not driven by the bank liquidity. It would be more driven by the bank ownership. I don't know of a meaningful position in either of the banks that have failed that was held by Capers.
Which is good news for our state investments. You came from the state legislature. The state legislature is in session right now. What sorts of issues are you working on with them? And one in particular that I would like to ask you about, there is some talk about whether or not to put anything into law regarding how people would invest in relation to some ESG policies, those environmental, social type issues. Would that change the way the state operates at all?
So it might guide. I don't know that it would change dramatically, in that the area where that again would be most impacted would be at the Capers portfolio. We already have a law on the books that says it cannot be the sole objective to use an ESG type of criteria in making an investment selection. But it would change perhaps some of the way that we handle the proxy voting within that, and whether or not we need more oversight there in the bills that are currently proposed. The House bill I know is slated for debate tomorrow, and that would largely look at how do we just make sure we get to neutral is generally the goal. The challenge is agreeing on where neutral is.
Right.
Is not as simple as it would seem that it should be, because the goal is that we don't want to discriminate either for or against any type of investment.
Final few seconds for folks at home. How can they find out if the unclaimed property division has any money that belongs to them?
Well, we were really fortunate.
Because that's kind of fun thing,
That
right?
is fun. Giving people money back has been a lot of fun, and the help that folks have provided. kansascash.ks.gov. Go there, click on the unclaimed link, put in your name. Remember to put in a maiden name or other things to try and find property that may have been lost along the way. We'd love to get that back to people.
kansascash.ks.gov. It's always fun. We've partnered with prior state treasurers to have special days devoted to that unclaimed property effort. And it is fun to see people find out that they have money coming to them. And as a reminder, they will never charge you to get that money back because it belongs to you. So beware of any scams. Incidentally, there was an update. Treasurer Johnson mentioned that bill regarding the ESG criteria. The House did pass that measure. It is House Bill 2436. What it does is it prohibits state agencies and local governments from giving preferential treatment to or discriminating against companies based on environmental, social, or governance criteria. That bill now heads to the Senate. Okay, I promised you some fun this week, so let's start out in Noto, the North Topeka Arts and Entertainment District. They welcome spring with their Redbud Festival. It's all month of April with various events planned. The kickoff, no fooling, is April 1st, so we got to hear a little bit about what's involved in that and how the event's major sponsor, FHL Bank, believes it's super important to have arts to make a vibrant community. Noto Executive Director Tom Underwood is here with Marty Schlossman from FHL Bank, the presenting sponsor for the Redbud Festival. So thank you for both being here.
Thanks for having us.
And this is a sure sign of spring when we start talking about the Redbuds and the Redbud Festival. So the kickoff event, or let's back up and talk about the Redbud Festival in general, Tom. What is all encompassed in this?
Well, we have our primary supporter over the years has been the Redbud Foundation. Because of their generous support, we built the Redbud Park. It just made sense that we were going to kick off spring with the Redbud Festival. And of course, we have about 40 Redbud trees planted in the district in the last couple of years. So we're hoping the weather cooperates. I think the trees are trying to pop out. We're looking for the Redbud blossoms to come out. It's just our way of kicking off spring. We've been, maybe not quite as active over the winter months, but this is where we're really getting ready. And frankly, starting April 1st, the rest of our year is full. And so
Right.
this is our big kickoff to spring.
The Redbud Festival encompasses the month of April. So
It
the
does,
trees have some
basically.
time,
Right,
but April
right.
1st is the big event. What is all happening on that
April
day?
1st is our kickoff event, and it's really a family-focused, fun day on Saturday. We're going to have music in Redbud Park with a couple of different performers. We have our Kids Youth Festival going on. We've invited young folks to submit their works of art, and we're going to hang them up as kind of their own exhibit, and it's going to hopefully stay up there for the entire duration of the Redbud Festival. We have like a scavenger hunt for the kiddos. We're also, Skinner's Nursery donated 100 redbud tree sprigs that we're going to be giving away that day. So there's a lot of different activities going on starting on that Saturday. That's just really the start for things going on really every weekend, throughout the entire month.
A celebration like this does take resources, and that's where your sponsors are so important to you. And FHL Bank, Marty, has signed on for Redbud Festival. When you think about all the different things that you could do in the community, what stood out about the Redbud Festival?
Well, you know, at the Federal Home Loan Bank, part of our mission is helping our members build communities, and our members are typically small community financial institutions, banks, those sorts of things. For us, it made sense to kind of partner up with these wonderful organizations that are also sponsors of NOTA, but really kind of come alongside them and help build. Number one, we love the fact that it's kind of the signature kickoff event for the spring, and just an opportunity to really work side by side with Tom and really kind of help support to the great things that have been happening in NOTA these last 11 plus years now.
Where do you find that being so important to a community, to have a vibrant arts district and a vibrant arts community in general?
Well, for me personally, you know, I've been now in North Topeka for almost 21 years. And that was one of the reasons I even joined the board too, was just because, you know, it's just incredible to see the transformation that has taken place in NOTA these last 11 plus years. And so it was just opportunity for me to give back, for the bank to get involved and really continue to build upon that foundation that's been put in place.
To see it flooded with art and color and life instead of water and mud. The
Absolutely.
history buffs out there from
Yeah.
1951.
Yes.
It's just, and you're right, it is great
Yeah.
to see the comeback it's made. So we'll run down the schedule of events for the kickoff event for the Redbud Festival, April 1st. From 11 to 3 is when that youth art exhibition is, the art scavenger hunt. I think that sounds super fun.
Yeah.
Can people at any age take part?
Sure.
Like, you'd let me take
Of
part?
course.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Noon to 3, there'll be various music in the park, and then from 1 to 3 is when they are having that Redbud Sprig giveaway courtesy of Skinner's. And as you said, Tom, is all of this centered around the park itself and the park pavilion, if folks are looking
Well,
for where
that's
to find
going
the
to
activity?
be, that will be the central location,
Okay.
but we're encouraging folks to go out into the district. That's where the scavenger hunt comes in. So it's finding auto at different locations throughout the district.
All right.
So not just there, it's really going to be throughout.
It is always fun to see what they have planned in Noto. And true story, I had to get some photos taken right after that show, and we chose Noto as the location. Tons of colorful murals. If you haven't been, North Kansas Avenue, just north of the Kansas River, check out the North Topeka Arts and Entertainment District. We did have a little bit of an arts theme this week. This is Theater in Our Schools Month, and the students from Topeka West High School have just been incredible going out and advocating for the arts in education. We had a couple of the students visit with us about why they are so passionate about this issue. We welcome Phoebe, Edgerton-Kufahl, and Charlie White to the Red Couch. Thank you so much for being here, both of you.
Thank you.
And we're all wearing purple today for the Topeka West Chargers and the K-State Wildcats. There's a lot of purple going on here. So Theater in Our Schools is this month. What does it mean to you, Phoebe? What have you all been doing during this month to spread the message and make sure people know what theater means?
The big thing that we did was on March 2nd was Advocacy Day at the Capitol. So we took a group of, was it like 10 or so?
Yeah, I think about a dozen maybe. I don't
Wow.
know.
Yeah, so about 12 of us went to the Capitol and we spent the day talking to our state representatives, saying like our asks about them maybe putting like a statement on their social media about how they value theater in the schools, and just kind of being there to show that it's something that we care about and it's also important in schools, not just a thing to throw away.
We do have some pictures of all the things that you've been doing, because there was the state capitol, there was a city council thing with the mayor, you guys were doing the school board, you've been everywhere. Charlie, when you try to express what theater has added in your life, what do you say? What has it brought to you?
Well, personally, in my situation, I have become I feel, I should say, so much more fulfilled as an individual. My ability to speak publicly, to express myself, to really get the full effect of my voice, my education. That is all theater's doing.
Which is a very important message when people say, well, goodness, maybe we should just focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic. You say this is part of that.
Oh, absolutely. I was very involved in my education before I joined theater, but I did not have a good outlet to express that. I was a pretty insular person. And then I got into theater, and then I figured out that I can channel this energy. I can be a presence on a stage and really speak to a large group of people with these skills.
Speaking of the stage, you all are not done yet. There's plenty of school year left. So Phoebe, what are some of the things you have coming up in April that you hope the public will come? Because that's part of the deal. Public, come see what you all are doing.
So we have 2 shows coming up. One of them was written by a group of 7 students. Both me and Charlie were on that writing team. It's made by this advanced acting class that we have. It's called Players. It's also like our school improv troupe. It's directed by a senior in that class. It's very much like these 3 hitchhikers. They come to this town and they find that it is not what they thought it was at all. It's an interesting show.
How big a deal has that been to see the whole process through from start to finish? I mean, you wrote this. It's not like just your teacher went and said, hey, let's bring this one in.
I am very proud of the work that we've been able to do in the short time that we had. I think it's such a great opportunity to be able to have this experience at such a young age, and I'm really, really excited to see it really come to life. We don't have much of a set yet, but we've just memorized all our lines, and
awesome.
I think it's going really, really well.
And Charlie, you have a main stage show coming up yet too?
Yes, we do. It's called Dead Man's Cell Phone. It's also a senior directed show, and it's a smaller cast. It's a meditation on how technology and human society is interacting and how it's changing due to that.
I feel like I should put my cell phone really far away when you're talking about that topic.
It's certainly an interesting perspective, and it's a really lovely, beautiful, almost tragedy in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and also you have that element of surreal comedy.
Oh, yes.
In there.
It's
always,
really beautiful.
Always. Well, I'll get the dates for that posted on WIBW.com as well. Phoebe, Charlie, thank you. And I think you should get extra credit for your civics and government classes as well, for all that you all have done throughout the month.
Fingers crossed.
There you go. They were so fun, and it was impressive to see how much these students have been interacting with state and local leaders and letting them know why the arts are important to them personally and in the educational experience. And here's what else happened. On the day that Charlie and Phoebe were there, Charlie went to another guest who was in the studio and said, hey, I'm Kelly's son, because it turned out that Charlie's mom had worked on a project with Ric Barron, a musician who also was with us that day. Now, Ric is a 2-time Kansas Music Hall of Fame inductee. He's well known around the area. He has spent many years with various groups. 22 years he and his wife Marta were among members of The Exceptions, a local band. He currently performs with The Mix, and now he also is out with some solo work. So it was a great time catching up with Ric in the studio. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Melissa.
So you've had a lot of groups that you've performed with. Currently, it's The Mix, which I have described to your friend and mine, Lamont Jackson. You guys are just like an all-star of musicians from the Topeka area.
Yeah, so to speak. Yeah, I guess you could say that with Mike Babb. And the musicians that I work with are awesome. So
what keeps you going in music?
You know, it's funny you say that. It's just it is something that is embedded in me that I can't stop. I have a lot of friends to stop and do other businesses, but I have to continue with this whole business of writing, playing, singing, and I can't stop.
The Mix is the most recent incarnation. What other groups have you been involved in that some folks may be familiar with?
Well, I play with Joel Davison. He's another local talent here, along with my wife, and we have the Cats Trio right now. So we do that, and it's really cool little trio. And Joel is the magician of the group with all the technical stuff that he does to provide the background music. Such.
And The Exceptions for many years. That's
yes,
how I first came to know you and Marta.
Randy Wills is an exceptional musician. On this particular album, he helped make this a beautiful. There's songs in there that are nice. I wrote them, but boy, when he put his touch to it.
And I will have you tell me a little bit about it, but first, let's listen to a bit. Legacy is the name of the disc. The song you're going to hear a bit of is called Who. So let's listen to a little bit of that.
Oh, which one?
Who.
Oh.
Who.
Come on home, baby. That man been lying to you. You know how much I love you.
I want to know who
baby's heart. Well, I wanna know who stole my baby's heart. 'Cause I'm a king without a queen. Who stole my baby's heart?
Now, I would describe this as kind of roxy, bluesy. How would you describe your style?
And that's pretty much eclectic.
Eclectic.
Yes, and there's different, I've been influenced. I'm not ashamed to say I just turned 71.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, you
never.
met my 92-year-old
I did meet
mother
your
who's
mother.
still moving right along. And hi, Mom. And I've experienced country, blues, rock, funk, reggae, and it's all inside of me, this music that we spoke about earlier. And it comes out in this music that's there.
Where can people get the CD?
Well, that's funny.
Come out to your next show and Rick will have it for you.
Yeah, I know. I can't. They don't make CDs anymore.
True.
We did this for friends and my friends
Where can
that
we
don't.
find the music then? Is it...
But it's online.
Okay.
It's streaming on every major streaming platform in the United States and in Europe, which just kind of blew me away when.
The world is a lot smaller nowadays than it was when we were kids.
It is, and
Everyone just search for Ric Barron on your favorite streaming platform. We were jamming to it last night in the newsroom. You won't be disappointed. And Rick, I want to have you back because you've got 2 more CDs in the works, so I want to hear all about them.
Yes, you do. Thank you
And we're
so
going to hear
much.
about them later. Rick, I appreciate you being here. So there you go. When you're done listening to the podcast, you can go and do a search for Ric Barron's music. That's R-I-C, B as in boy, A-R-R-O-N. The name of his disc is Legacy. Some great tunes on there. His wife, Marta, told me that he wrote one of the songs for her more than 20 years ago. So this is something that has stood the test of time in their hearts, which is truly special. So glad you could be with us for another episode of Eye on Northeast Kansas, the podcast. Remember, you can always watch the video clips from these segments and all of the guests that we have on our 4 o'clock Central Time show on WIBW.com. You'll also find them on my Facebook page, WIBW, Melissa Bruner. You can watch the show streaming live Monday through Friday, 4 o'clock Central Time on WIBW.com. Glad you're along with us. We'll see you on the Red Couch.